Here at the Center for Spiritual Living, we have a spiritual worldview, and it's that divinity, or God if you prefer that word, is the source of all that is. That everything is created, you can say, in the mind of God, to be the unique individual expression of life that it is. And the result then is that we have this shared origin in divinity, and at the same time, we are unique and individual. So we've got both diversity plus oneness equals reality. It's complicated. Now, in the 50s, Albert Einstein wrote a letter, and in it he said that we human beings are part of the whole that we call the universe, a special kind of part of the universe, a part that is limited by time and space. And as a result, we humans, we experience ourselves, our thoughts, our feelings as separated out from everything else, and that's a problem. And he called that an optical delusion. An optical delusion in consciousness. Now that's something. That's a wonderful phrase worth contemplating. Separateness is an optical delusion in our consciousness. And I can get that. I understand that because what we see with our eyes is only part of the story. It's like the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more going on, you know. What we see with our eyes is the outer world, the surface, and not the inner world, the deeper part. It's all there. I saw a sign in a window once. It said, "If only our eyes could see souls instead of bodies, how different our ideal of beauty would be." So I looked up that quote because it wasn't attributed, and I found on Goodreads, you know, that app that people share their reading experience, and Goodreads says it's a quote from the American singer and songwriter Lauren Jauregui. I don't know that artist, but I love the quote because it explains what an optical delusion is. If only our eyes saw souls instead of bodies. How different our ideals of everything would be. Well, you know, we know this. You can tell from the idioms in our language. Don't judge a book by its cover. We know that. Beauty is only skin. Yeah, we know it's only skin deep. Still waters run deep. We know this. We've got this. And yet, we got to refresh that, and we got to get back to looking beyond what appears before us. We got to get back to trusting that there is more to the iceberg. In that letter that Einstein wrote in the 50s, he also wrote that getting free from this optical delusion is one of the goals of true religion. And he wrote that to get peace of mind, true peace of mind, we do that not by accepting the delusion of our separateness, but by overcoming it, or going beyond it, or seeing life in a larger way. That's another beautiful thought worth contemplating. The goal of true religion is to dissolve the illusion of separation, not enforce it. You know, the history of the word religion is interesting also. Some say it comes from older Latin words, most likely ligare, which means to bind or to connect. Then you add re in front of it and you get religare, which means to reconnect or to rebind or to link back, I would say, to our origin or original state. And so the way I think about it, then my religion, your religion, is whatever I do regularly that takes me back to my true self, to my awareness of divinity, of God. It's whatever I do that softens or overcomes my sense of separateness. It's whatever I do that dissolves the delusion. It's whatever I do that keeps on waking me up from the dream of separateness. It's a good question to ask oneself. What is your practice of reconnecting to your origin? What is it that you do regularly that softens the delusion? You see, I want to make sure, I want to check that what I'm practicing is continually waking me up and not putting me back to sleep, so that I can dream that it's just me. Now, this optical delusion of separateness, it works like a prison, because it holds us in, it restricts us to what we can see with our visual eyes, and to what we know, and to what is predictable, and what is familiar, to what we prefer. It's probably why we relate better to the people closest to us, because we see them and know them. There's nothing unknown, we think. And if we want to get out of this prison, I think the way to do it is, to go beyond its restrictions, its limitation. In other words, to connect to a wider circle of beings and to learn all over again how to see souls beyond bodies. I think we have to learn to look at life from both sides now. We have to relearn how to use our whole system, to look at life with our physical eyes, our mental eyes, our spiritual eyes, our emotional eyes, so that we can see through into what appears before us, and through the diversity into the oneness, and embrace it all. I think we have to learn again to see life, creation, the way God sees it. Now, in our recommended book of the month, the Dalai Lama recognizes that what humans share in common is their humanity. And it's a good place to start with that, to recognize that, to take that in. Now, we're not yet talking about other beings, the animal kingdom and nature. For now, we're just talking about humans. Humans recognizing their shared humanity. Can we do that? After all, if we can't embrace and care about that humanity we have in common, how are we going to care for the rest of creation? Now, the Dalai Lama acknowledges that it can be a challenge. It suggests that we focus on something that we all have, that we can identify with, that we can practice and understand and get better at. And that something is compassion. And if compassion is, it's too big of a step right now with everything that's going on, maybe we can start, he suggests, by developing a calm inner world. And he uses a beautiful word to talk about it. Equanimity. Oh, I love that word. I have to actually look at it to pronounce it well. Equanimity. Oh, I just want to say it over and over again. It means mental calmness. It means being even-tempered, even in a difficult situation. It means also being fair and impartial, and that's where it comes in. It's very important that. I think of equanimity as having the gentle touch in life, Equus equal an animus mind, an equal mind toward all. And the Dalai Lama warns us that having an equal mind is not the same as being indifferent. Having inner calm does not mean you don't care or that you don't feel a thing. How he describes it is that it means that you and I try to be as free from prejudice as we possibly can when we're dealing with other people, so that we can approach more and more an equal treatment in our minds. So we try to drop the labels of friend, foe, stranger, till we get to the place that he calls the gut-level recognition of the fundamental equality in our humanness. I love that. And then he gives us an exercise to get there. So I think we should do it. Let's practice. Here's the prelude to the exercise. Although it is normal to feel close to our loved ones, negative towards those who wish us harm, and indifferent towards strangers, too often we create unnecessary problems and suffering for ourselves and others by clinging to those categories excessively. As discussed earlier, this is the root of our tendency to relate to others in terms of us and them. So, cultivating greater equanimity with respect to others is extremely helpful as an aid to living an ethical life. So here's the exercise. I invite you to do it with me. If you breathe in, and as you exhale, perhaps let your eyes close if you feel comfortable doing so. He says, begin by relaxing and settling the mind. Suggests maybe you and I use a breathing exercise. And we can do that with even one breath, like this, breathing in and paying attention and breathing out. Or doing, as Ernest Holmes says, letting go of everything as best as possible. And then he invites us, call up an image in your mind, using your imagination, of a small group of people you like, such as some of your close friends and relatives. And try to establish this image in as much detail and as with much accuracy as you can. And then after a moment, you're going to add a second image right next to the first image. The second image is of a group of people toward whom you feel indifferent. Like could be people on the bus or at the supermarket. And again, try to make this image as detailed as possible. You will be using your imagination. And then again, and finally, you're going to add another image next to the second and first. This third is an image of a group of people you dislike, or with whom you are in conflict. Or better still, it's a group of people whose views you strongly disagree with. And again, try to establish it as clearly and in as much detail as you can. Now, having created the images of these three groups of people in your mind, start noticing your normal reactions toward them by letting those arise. Notice your thoughts and feelings towards each group one at a time. Perhaps you will start noticing that you have a natural tendency to feel attachment, warmth towards the first group. Perhaps you'll feel indifference towards the second. And maybe hostility toward the third. And next you want to begin to examine your own thoughts and think about how each of these responses affects you. Perhaps you'll find that your feelings towards the members of that first group of people you know and love are pleasurable, might even inspire confidence and strength coupled with a desire to help. Perhaps you will notice that the second group, you have no feelings that excite or inspire you in a particular direction or of concern at all. And now that third group. Perhaps your feelings and thoughts about them excite your mind in negative directions. The next step in your meditation is to consider, using your critical faculty, consider that the people we think of as our enemies today may not be our enemies tomorrow. And that this can be true of our friends also. Sometimes our feelings towards friends, such as attachment, can lead to problems for us, while sometimes our interactions with enemies can benefit us, maybe make us stronger and alert. Contemplating these complexities may lead you to reflect on the futility of relating to others in an extreme manner, whatever group they belong to. Once you see that this way of relating to others impedes your ability to develop goodwill, you can begin to try to lessen the strength of your extreme feelings. I invite you to let the next breath you take be deeper than the one before. As you sigh, let yourself begin to open your eyes and to return to the activity of the room. The Dalai Lama wraps up the exercise by saying, over time, the aim is to be able to relate to others, not as friends, foes, or strangers, not according to your classifications of them, but as fellow human beings whose fundamental equality with yourself you recognize. Now, I love this exercise, and it's one that I want to practice because I can tell it has something for me in it. Three things come to mind that feel very important to me about this exercise. And the first is that by recognizing our shared humanity, we begin to promote compassion. It allows me to understand that my inner experience is universal. You know, all the feelings I've had and thought were uniquely mine, fear, loss, jealousy, anger, repulsion, love, kindness, they're universal. And that allows me to be less judgmental about my own or other people's experiences, because I began to get this sense we're all just figuring this out together. The second point that is so important to me is that it's an act of kindness to be willing to face the dropping of the categories in me. It's hard work. And an act of kindness, one act of loving kindness, I believe starts a chain reaction that ultimately, I believe, is what adds to a world that works better for everyone. I believe that an act of loving kindness goes beyond the act itself and keeps on rippling out into creation. And I see the willingness to do this kind of inner excavation has a tremendous kindness to the world, especially if it softens my heart. And the third thing that is important to me is that relearning how to relate to others without the labels of friend, foe, and strangers, but as fellow human beings who are fundamentally equal, is something that takes me back, links me back to my origin, to my original state of being, to the way I was when I was created. I love young children who have not yet learned that certain groups should be hated or feared or rejected or avoided. The BBC made a video showing children, very young children, answering the question, what makes you different from your friends? Oh, it's delightful. One explains that it's about lettuce. He said, I used to like lettuce, but my friend doesn't, so now I don't. Another one answer the question, what's different is that she never stops talking. And another one says, I'm not good at dance, relating to her friend who gleefully says, I am. And what is so beautiful about the video is that those of us watching the children can see very clearly that there are real physical differences between them. They are different ethnicities, they have different accents, and they have different physical bodily abilities. But the children don't reference that at all in their answers because they are not looking at bodies. They're looking with their whole system and they're considering the differences seriously as being about such things as lettuce and self-expression and dancing and communication. It's such a beautiful thing. In an article about that video, in the words of Linda Blair, she's a clinical psychologist that specializes in families and children, she says, children are never born deciding whether social categorizations are good or bad. You were not born with the social categorizations that you have. Whatever prejudice you have, there is no God reason for it. It's learned. She goes on and says, between the ages of 4 and 7, children begin to copy the adult figures in their lives. And then they start questioning what it all means, Yeah. Think of that. In your innocent, original, untouched state of being, you are naturally inclined toward connecting. Everything else is learned. Oh, there's so much to unlearn. There's more to unlearn than there is to learn. So relearning how to relate to people becomes a very worthwhile activity. And thankfully, we don't have to do it alone because there is a power for good in the universe greater than we are, and it's in us. And there is magic in our love. And there is a way of seeing that our soul already knows how to do, and we can use all of that to create a more inclusive world. And we can begin right now, today, with very small actions that help others feel accepted, cherished. A good place to start is in the way we talk to each other. Today, so much talking is just about getting a point across quickly. and decisively without argument. When conversation is really capable of doing so much more. Conversation in the form of true listening has the power to take down bias. It's magic. So I want to leave you with some questions you might use to practice with. And I want to suggest that you use these questions especially with people that you may have put into the category of stranger or foe. Where did you grow up and what's most memorable about it? Who was your role model growing up and why? Who is your role model right now and why? What is an accomplishment you're proud of? For what in life are you grateful? And the most important one, what is one thing you wish all of humanity knew and understood about you? Oh, I think you will find that it is very difficult to hate on somebody when you know their story. Now, next week, we're going to talk about why oneness is so important when it comes to practically living a spiritual life. So I look forward to that.